On a quiet stretch of highway that cut through endless miles of golden fields and distant mountains, a young woman named Riley was steering her 18-wheeler through the morning fog. She was only 24, but carried herself with the quiet discipline of someone who had lived years beyond her age. In the back of her truck sat two highly trained police dogs, Coda and Blaze, German shepherds who had served in K-9 training programs and were now under her care as she transported them to their new assignment. Even on that calm morning, Riley felt a strange tension humming under her skin, as if the universe was preparing to test her once again. She had faced judgment her entire life, people doubting her strength, her ability, her place in a world dominated by men. But what would happen on this highway today would shake her more deeply than anything before. Before we continue, if you believe bravery comes in all shapes, and kindness deserves a second chance, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartwarming Kindness. It truly helps stories like these reach more hearts. As Riley drove deeper into the countryside, the peaceful hum of the engine was suddenly overpowered by the thunderous roar of motorcycles approaching from behind. She saw them in her side mirror first, 4 bikers riding in a tight formation, their engines growling like beasts marking territory. At first, she paid them no mind. Truckers shared the road with all kinds of people. But something about the way these bikers closed in behind her made her grip the wheel a little tighter. Their helmets were intimidating, their jackets patched with aggressive symbols. Riley wasn't easily scared, but she knew trouble when she sensed it. When the bikers started weaving dangerously close to her truck's tires, she realized this wasn't normal road behavior. One of them slapped the side of her trailer as they passed, startling her. Another pulled up beside her window, peering in as if mocking her. They revved their engines loudly, circling her like vultures. Riley swallowed her fear and focused on keeping the truck steady. The last thing she wanted was an accident. Coda and Blaze sensed her tension instantly. Even inside their secure compartment, they let out low, alert growls. They were trained to protect, to read danger before a human could fully understand it. Riley tried to calm them with her voice, even though her own heart was pounding against her ribs. The bikers weren't finished. They sped in front of her and slowed down drastically, forcing her to brake hard. The truck lurched and everything shook. Riley clenched her jaw. She pulled to the side of the road, hoping they would continue and leave her alone. Instead, the bikers stopped too. 4 large men climbed off their bikes and began approaching her cab with the intimidating swagger of people who believed they were untouchable. Riley's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't weak, but she also wasn't reckless. She locked the doors and reached for her phone. The nearest town was still several miles away, and signal here came and went like a fickle breeze. The men knocked on her window, each thump echoing like a drumbeat of malice. They shouted things she refused to give power to by remembering. Their mocking laughter filled the air. Coda and Blaze went silent inside, not afraid waiting. The bikers grew bolder, trying to pull on the door handle, tapping their helmets against the window as if daring her to step out. Riley quickly checked her mirror. No vehicles on the road. No help. Just her, the dogs, and these men who didn't know that behind her calm eyes lived the courage of someone who had survived far worse. When one of the bikers climbed onto her step rail and tried to force the door open, Riley made a split-second decision. She triggered the emergency release for the K-9 compartment. The bikers didn't hear it, but they would. The moment the door clicked open, Coda and Blaze charged out with the power and precision of elite protectors. They didn't attack blindly. They positioned themselves between Riley's truck and the bikers, standing tall, ears forward, eyes locked with military focus. The transformation from silent passengers to trained defenders happened instantly, and the bikers froze in shock. Coda gave a warning bark so deep it vibrated in the air. Blaze followed with a bark that echoed across the empty highway. These were not ordinary dogs. Their posture, their discipline, their sharp attention, everything about them screamed trained police K-9. The bikers stumbled backward, suddenly unsure. Their bravado cracked like thin glass. One of them reached for something at his belt, but Blaze took a single step forward in perfect formation, and the man's hand trembled. The dogs didn't lunge. Not yet. They didn't have to. Their training had taught them restraint, intimidation, and protection without unnecessary harm. And right now, they were reading Riley's fear like a book. Riley slowly stepped out of the truck. her voice steady even though her legs felt weak. She stood behind the dogs, drawing courage from their presence. The biggest biker tried to regain control, muttering insults, but even he couldn't hide the shaken look on his face. Then Coda did something unexpected. Instead of barking again, he issued a deep, controlled growl and stepped directly toward the biker who had tried to climb into Riley's cab. It wasn't an attack, it was a warning perfected by years of training. One more step, and you will regret it. The biker stumbled back and held up his hands. Blaze shifted slightly, guarding Riley's left side like a shield. Their movements were synchronized, precise, and terrifying to anyone who didn't understand police K-9 behavior. The men backed up toward their bikes, trying to salvage their pride, but fear had already won. They muttered curses under their breath, but none dared get close again. One of them finally yelled, "We were just messing around," but everyone there knew that was a lie. The bikers mounted their motorcycles, their engines revving shakily. They sped off with far more fear than aggression, disappearing down the highway like cowards who had just tasted real consequences. The moment they were gone, Riley collapsed to her knees beside the dogs, tears spilling before she could stop them. Not out of weakness, but relief, gratitude, emotion she had suppressed for far too long. Coda pressed his forehead against her shoulder, and Blaze nudged her hand gently. They weren't just trained protectors. They were family, in fur and muscle. She hugged them both tightly before gathering herself together. She knew she needed to report the incident, but in the silence that followed, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to let the shock settle into strength. When she finally made it to the nearest town, officers arrived and recorded everything. They praised the dog's discipline and commended Riley for her courage. Word spread fast about the young woman truck driver who stood her ground, about the elite police dogs who protected her with perfect restraint, about how bravery sometimes comes wrapped in unexpected forms. The incident changed Riley. She found herself no longer shrinking in fear of judgment. She leaned into her strength. She embraced her role not just as a trucker, but as a guardian of the extraordinary animals under her care. Coda and Blaze continued their journey with her until reaching their new assignment, but the bond formed that day on the highway stayed with her forever. Later that night, as she sat alone in her truck, overlooking the quiet parking lot, she realized something important. In a world filled with people who tried to intimidate or belittle others, courage didn't always roar. Sometimes it stood quietly beside you with sharp eyes and a loyal heart. Before we finish, if this story touched your heart, even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartwarming Kindness. It truly encourages me to create more heartfelt stories for you. And please drop a comment telling which moment of the story moved you the most. It means more than you know. Riley, Coda, and Blaze would want you to remember one thing. Kindness may be quiet, but it is never weak.